April.
April, and her real name,
What's that?
Michelle.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good name.
April's her name.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get started here.
She
with
also
the
has
last
this
round.
nickname that has
Take your seats,
ants in
please.
it,
Uh-oh.
and my
Are you
dad.
supposed to be telling that secret?
They tell me all the time.
Thank you very much for hanging around. We'll go through one more round of questions with the candidates, and then they'll have 2 minutes each to say whatever they would like about their campaigns. Mr. Stevens, we're back to the top of the order with you. And your question is this. In a city such as Louisiana, nepotism is hard to overcome. What specific measures, if any, would you put in place to avoid it? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, in this small town, it does seem like everybody is related to everyone else. That's not really the case, it just seems that way. But I don't know everyone. I used to pride myself years ago in telling people that I knew everybody in town. We had kids in school, and I worked with the school in the sports programs. And I did know a lot of people, but once you get away from it, I don't know everybody. But there are ways you can find out if someone is up for some job or to be appointed. You can find out their background, their family. It's just as simple as asking a couple of questions from the right people. And we can't have nepotism. Maybe everyone doesn't really understand how nepotism works. So we would have to be very clear on what we're doing and research who we're wanting to appoint to a certain job.
Thank you. Mr. Johnner, you have 2 minutes.
Nepotism in my little book of dirty words is not there. Nepotism is not a dirty word. When you have a small community, you're going to have some nepotism involved. But I am a firm believer in proficiency pay. A person does a good job, they get rewarded for doing that job. I don't care if he's the mayor's brother-in-law, and I'm not the mayor. I mean, that in itself is not bad. We have to have standards, and you know, I don't want to go on and drone about the military for a long time, but we had a way to deal with that type of thing. Everybody got an efficiency report 4 times a year. And you either did your job or you didn't. If you were incompetent and incapable, out the door. And we can certainly deal with that on a local level. People get a job. I don't care if he had some pull to get in on the street department and he drives a truck. If he gets my hill clean when it's icy out there, I'm real proud of him. I don't have a problem with nepotism. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you have 2 minutes.
I figure it doesn't matter who you are, it's doing the job right, you know, be rewarded for it. You know, that's, I mean, I know a lot of people, and just because you know Joe from Jan, and, you know, and this guy from that guy, as long as this guy is doing his job, you know, and hey, give it to him.
Thank you. Mr. Meagher, you have 2 minutes.
We're not talking about, nepotism is not about what I think it is. It's defined for us, it's handed to us by state statute. It is illegal to commit nepotism, for instance, by appointing someone that's your brother-in-law or son-in-law or within, I think, the 4th degree. And it's a very defined and real thing. We've run into some problems with it. In all honesty, I think it's unfortunate some of the training that we get for newly elected officials by Missouri Municipal League comes after the appointments, generally every year. So I think that we run foul of that just because our newly elected officials don't always know what that is. The penalty for nepotism, by the way, if you're a city council member or mayor, is you immediately, without question, lose your office, period. There's not a question about it. You don't get to go talk to someone about it. You lose your office. The penalty's huge. It's a real defined thing. We need to be very careful with it. We need to make sure that, if, for instance, if I'm a mayor and I'm appointing someone that I am aware of what those relationships are, that make sure my council is aware if they're gonna vote on that. Also, nepotism doesn't mean you can't have any say or discussion or talk about the issue, what's going on. It means you can't officially make that vote. You need to abstain. It's a very simple solution. You simply abstain. But it doesn't mean if you're talking about appointing the fire chief, for example, that doesn't mean you can't talk about anything related to the fire department. It just means if it's going to if you're voting on something that's going to directly affect, and put you in a situation of nepotism as defined by state statute, then you need to abstain. So we need to stay engaged in the conversation. Don't let it stop us. Just be aware of it. And I don't think it's really that difficult of an issue for us to deal with.
Thank you. Mr. Dempsey, you have 2 minutes.
Nepotism is, to me, is, basically like you ride a double-edged sword. Because some people aren't gonna have a problem with it, some people aren't gonna have a problem with it. So it creates an animosity between the town, people. So there's just no, in my opinion, if I'm elected mayor, no, I'm not gonna go out and get my brother, sister-in-law, or somebody to be a favorable part of the city right beside me, because it's just gonna create chaos in the future. So, with that being said, that's all I have to say. The other candidates have harped on enough.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the 12th question, and Mr. Johnner, you will get the opportunity to answer it first. The question is about infrastructure, and we've talked a little bit about that already, but this question is a little bit different. Discuss your views on infrastructure projects such as a new Mississippi River Bridge and repaving Georgia Street. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Georgia Street is a tough issue. The water main sits under that street. If we spend the $1 million it takes to pave Georgia Street, we're gonna dig it up the next week. You've gotta, that is the very definition of infrastructure. That water line has to be picked up and moved. Well, actually what they do literally is they run a new main down the side of the street, then they go under the street and they take all the connections off and you hook onto that. And then once you got the water main and the sewer main out from under the street, then you can go back in and pave that. That's why Georgia Street may be a 10-year project before that's actually paved. And I believe Mr. Stevens here addressed that earlier, that we're looking at ways to get Georgia Street paved, but it's a complicated issue. In terms of the Mississippi River Bridge, I can't imagine, no one will ever ask me how to do it, but I can't imagine not building one bridge next to the one that's there, and it goes back in the same place it's been, always been, and a minimal amount of businesses are disrupted by that. And I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer in my mind that we approach it that way. You can't cut off commerce. We can't take out a bridge and wait a year for another bridge to be built. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you have 2 minutes.
Georgia Street's gonna be Georgia Street. Like you said, you put in a new street, a week, month, maybe 2 weeks, you're gonna have a water leak, you're gonna tear the street back up, and then you're back to square one. As far as the Mississippi River Bridge, Clark Bridge, the only way I can see anything happen is if they keep the old bridge going until they get the new bridge done. If they want to tear it down, tear it down. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Mr. Nieder, you have 2 minutes.
The new Champ Clark Bridge is really well outside of our scope of any kind of authority or decision making. The MoDOT did produce a group of citizens group. I'm a member of that. I represent small business on that group, and they were very receptive to the conversation. But in the end, that's an economic decision that the state's going to make. We're on a list. We're high on that list, but there's no funding for it. They've already decided where this thing's going to go. It's going to go right next to the existing bridge. There's some details about exactly how it routes up in that area that are still being planned out, but that's outside of our scope. Georgia Street, however, is square on our laps. The days when the state's going to ride in with a white horse and a bag full of money and help us deal with Georgia Street, and that's long gone. That's never happening again. The grants we could get are matching grants. The best we could possibly come up with is some sort of a matching scenario. We're gonna have to come up with significant funds. Just repaving Georgia Street is something in the neighborhood of $800,000. That's repaving. We're not talking about doing the infrastructure underneath. So, you know, you're not gonna pull $800,000 even over 10 years out of our existing budget, but it needs to be done. So when DREAM Initiative or Missouri Department of Economic Development comes to me and says, hey, you ought to be looking at some tools that are out there to make this kind of a thing happen, I'm interested in looking. The last thing I want is a greater tax burden for anyone in the U.S., certainly in Louisiana. But if we don't deal with our two main business corridors, Georgia Street and 3rd Street, sidewalks and lighting in the streets, we're not gonna ever be able to afford the rest of what we need. So we've got some hard decisions. We need to look at all of our options.
Thank you. Mr. Dempsey, you have 2 minutes.
I can't agree with these candidates more. It's not gonna be an overnight fix. It's been in terrible shape for going on 20 years now, and the infrastructure is very, very important to get either one, in my opinion, surveyed and engineered to see if it's structurally sound still, to go ahead and leave the main where it's at, so we don't keep continually digging up Georgia Street. I understand the citizens of this town, including myself, want a new street that they can ride down smooth, not like a war wagon going down the street. There's limited options that we can discuss at the table when one of us get there. If we do have to dig the street up, I've always said since I moved back here from being retired, fix the problem. Don't put a Band-Aid on it, fix the problem. If you dig the street up, fix the street, compact it, put new pavement over it, fix it to where it's smooth again. We have city employees that ride up and down Georgia Street all day doing nothing, and I watch. Trust me, I watch. We need to fix that as a community. Make these guys earn their paycheck to fix things the way they're supposed to be fixed, when they're supposed to be fixed, not 2 years down the road. As far as the Champ Clark Bridge goes, if elected mayor, I hope to have some influence on it, with the council, with the community, with MoDOT, and, we'll make the best decision.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, you have 2 minutes.
Well, concerning the bridge, Mr. Niebner is right. There's very little we can do. This is going to be a decision with MoDOT and IDOT. We can go to the meetings, and we have had a representative at meetings. We can express our views and our wants or dislikes or whatever, but we have no authority to make any decisions. This will be done outside of our realm of possibility, and we will have to live with whatever it is. The bridge will be an asset to our community, as will the shared 4-lane highway to Mexico, if that comes to fruition. But we won't be involved in that decision making. And I don't have any figures to back up Mr. Niebner's figure of $800,000 to pave Georgia Street. I would love to tell you that, oh yes, we're going to repave Georgia Street. We can't do it all at once because we don't have that kind of money. I think there's more involved than just repaving or resurfacing Georgia Street. It's been done a couple of times since we had a process done called scarification. Well, in some places, we're either going to have to do that again or raise the manholes, because we're going to be creating huge drop-offs in there. So there's a lot involved. to getting this street resurfaced.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you will have the opportunity to answer first this time. And the question is this: do you think there are adequate safeguards in place to keep track of taxpayer money? And would you make any changes to the current accounting and auditing system? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, as far as I know, I'm sure there is. I haven't heard of any illegal activities, for the streets or anything like that. But I'm sure, if there is any illegal activity, eventually it'll come to surface. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Mr. Nieder, you have 2 minutes.
No, there are not adequate safeguards in place to protect the taxpayer dollars in the city of Louisiana. The budget is, to be kind, insufficient. It is not a useful tool to understand what's going on. It requires a tremendous amount of work to track and figure out what's happening. Pete did it for forever, and it was a line by line, item by item thing to make sure that happens, which is completely, thank you for your service, but it's unrealistic and it's not a good tool. There are much better ways to deal with this. We ran up against, for example, it is illegal for us to spend revenues that were produced by our enterprise funds, like our water. You pay your water bill to the city. That money is supposed to be used to run the water department, not to buy police cars or pay salaries. Okay? The fees that you pay are based on what it costs to provide that service. For 3 years in a row, we were using those funds to cover general revenue expenses, and it couldn't be seen on the budget. It took a tremendous amount of work. Thank you, Sal Polis, for the assistance with that. Sal and I worked diligently on the Finance Committee to show that. I produced graphics to illustrate it for the newspaper, trying to assist the communication to the people through the media. So the simple answer is no, those safeguards are not there. It is a mess, and it needs a lot of attention.
Thank you. Mr. Dempsey, you have 2 minutes.
I have grabbed a budget out of City Hall and I have looked over it, and I agree with Mr. Nieder. There are a lot of discrepancies with the budget. Are there safeguards in place? I don't know that at this time, due to I'm not in politics yet. Hopefully y'all will elect me and I will have the opportunity to go over the budget. I've tried to balance the budget a couple times in this town, this community, and with a few people, and things don't add up. Mr. Nieder is 100% correct. Things do not add up. So yes, we need to fix that. I would disagree with him from my military experience of budgeting battalions that, line items are needed, but we need to specify what line items are needed and fixate on that money being spent, how that line item, making sure that that money is being spent for what it's supposed to be spent for, not a huge general fund. I think we need to do away with the general fund, not totally, but downsize it dramatically, creating more line items so that we can better track the budget of this city and make sure the taxpayers' monies are being utilized correctly.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I'm not the financial wizard in our family. That's reserved for my oldest daughter. So I don't know all of the ins and outs of what can and cannot be done. I'll agree that for years, Ms. B. Gooden did an excellent job with the budget. It was balanced. We did not get slapped on the hands or on the backside by the auditors for doing something we couldn't do. But there's always room for improvements. If something is not working properly or we don't have enough information from something, then we need to correct that. But I would have to seek other advice until I could learn how we would have to do this. So I would defer to someone with a more of a financial accounting background to help us. But if changes are needed, I would certainly be in favor of making those changes.
Thank you. Mr. Johnner, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. I really don't have a great lot to add. I've been very concerned for a long time. I went to the trouble to go down to City Hall and asked to see a financial report, and I've never seen so much red ink in all my life. It's horrific. It's frightening. I've been upset myself. My own personal problem has been water. And that water goes to the general revenue. When I pay a water bill, I expect it to be for water, water tanks, water pumping, water treatment. When you take that money out of the water department and you put it in general revenue, what you've done to me is you've stolen my money. And not only did you do that, you kicked me in the backside when you added sales tax on to a tax. It's nothing more than a tax when you take my water bill and use it. I mean, it's personal. I've been fighting this. Mr. Hoffman's sitting there. He'll tell you, I've approached him. I like to garden in the summertime. It's not unusual for my water bill to hit 120, 140, 160. That's a lot of money for a person that sits on the river. It's not realistic. It does need to be fixed. I'm not sure that I have the answer. I don't know that I have the technical expertise to stop what's happening budget-wise. I don't know if it's even in the genre of mayor, but I would certainly like the opportunity to tackle the problem and see if I can't come up with a solution. And we have a tremendous resource. I don't want to give anybody an endorsement. There's a guy who works at City Hall, does a good job, I believe, and gets very little credit for what he does. I think if he was turned loose, he could solve the problem.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Niedner, you will have the opportunity to answer this question first, and it is this. How do you interpret the role of city administrator, and do you feel changes are necessary with that office? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Loaded that gun nicely.
It's just a question that was asked. I'll start the clock when you start.
It's an excellent question. And I was asked that same question by the city administrator. The city administrator has the most difficult job in Louisiana, and I think the city administrator's job is the most important job in the city of Louisiana, at least local government. I would never want to be a city administrator. And it takes a professional skill set, tremendous breadth of knowledge, and it takes some interpersonal skills that can help smooth over a lot of troubled and difficult opinions. My opinion specifically, and I've told this to Bob, and it should be no secret, I've had plenty of run-ins with Bob, and we've rebuilt every time, and that's okay. We figure it out as we go. I have no interest in getting rid of anyone. Well, I shouldn't say anyone. I have a problem with our legal counsel, to be honest. But outside of that, I have no intention of pushing for, lobbying for any changes in human resources should I become mayor for a year. I don't believe that the employees of Louisiana government in the last 4 years have been given the support they need, the encouragement they need to feel proud of their jobs. I don't believe that they've been recognized, valued. And if someone's livelihood's going to go on the block, it's going to be because of something that you had every opportunity to succeed with. And one last statement, specific to the city administrator. It would be irresponsible to not have that knowledge transfer for at least a year coming into a position like mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dempsey, you have 2 minutes.
I would agree with Mr. Niedner, and I've been asked by the community since I've been campaigning for mayor, even though I haven't been campaigning real hard. Am I gonna go in and fire everybody? No, I'm not, especially the city administrator. As Mr. Neener said, you know, you need at least a year of stabilization. Will I say, though, add to the comment that everybody needs evaluation. Everybody needs to know what they're doing, what their shortcomings are, what their strong points are, what needs worked on, and that does not happen. Me and the current mayor have had conversations about that, and in his opinion, he just said it wasn't feasible. I disagree with that. I think everybody in the city that's an employee of the city, including the city administrator, because Mr. Neener is correct, the city administrator is a very hard position to fill, and it does take a lot of education to fill it properly. So on that being said, evaluations would be done. Work areas would be improved where needed improved. Compliments given if doing a great job. Incentives. I think we need to work on some incentive programs for our employees to do a better job. So to make this a better town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, yes, the city administrator job is very important and very difficult. There's a lot involved. Maybe some people don't know all that is involved. But he has to deal not only with the budget, hiring and firing. There's many aspects of that. Is our city administrator perfect? No. Could we make some changes? Yes. If I'm elected mayor, I do have a few things in mind that I would like to change in our city administrator's duties. To add a little bit more accountability to that position. As was mentioned earlier, the periodic evaluations, that used to be done years ago, but it has not been done, to my knowledge, in the recent past. And I would like to see that started up again. But I do not foresee, if I'm the mayor, any wholesale dismissals from positions to start with. Not to say that something couldn't happen down the road, but that would just have to be worked out and dealt with as it became apparent.
Thank you. Mr. Johnner, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I believe in accountability for what happens under your control. Yeah, I would certainly want Bob to stand up and be responsible, but I'm not bent toward firing anybody on a wholesale basis. I think we can do different. There's a saying that I picked up years ago. It's hard to soar like an eagle when you're working with turkeys. So it's really hard to pick somebody out and say, it's all your fault. And I'm not prone to do that. I think everybody should have a fair chance to justify their job and the way they do it. And rambling, enough said. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Now, the way you're talking about Bob Jennings here makes me feel like he needs a twin brother. All the responsibilities he has. You know, as far as I know, what I know of Bob Jennings, he seems like he's doing the job he's supposed to be doing, and I can't really judge the man because I don't walk in his shoes. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Last question. Mr. Dempsey, you get to respond first, and it is this. Every fall, the air is filled with acrid smoke, and every winter the streets are turned into gravel roads. Would you favor a city ban on leaf burning while setting up a yard waste site? And isn't there a better, cost-efficient alternative to throwing worthless, dirty rock on the streets when the snow hits? You have 2 minutes, sir.
That's tough. Thanks, Rick. Yeah. I don't burn leaves or rubbish or anything in my yard because I do have respect for my neighbor. I would like to see Louisiana, and I mean, they've tried it up at Star Hill, and from what I understand, some whistleblowing went on and got DNR involved and got some people in trouble for burning up there. I would like to, I think we could come to a decisive place to do point burning, to eliminate the smoke, but I mean, with Mother Nature, you got wind that's gonna blow the smoke. You can't control that. And as far as rock goes, chat goes, is on the streets, we have street sweeping. And I'll go back to the previous question, you know, of employees of the city. You know, we need to utilize our equipment properly. We need to utilize it daily to get things fixed within the city. You know, how many times has street sweeper run since we haven't had any snow anymore? Twice, 3 times, I think I've seen it, running up and down the streets. What's that employee getting paid for? You know, let's get some leadership. If I'm elected mayor, I'm gonna get the leadership and guidance so that our city employees do the job that they need to be done. If you don't have leadership and you don't have guidance, then sure guys are gonna slough. I mean, I spent 21 years in the Army. If I wasn't on my soldiers every day making sure they completed their job, they'd find places to hide. That's one thing that we need to stop. We need to get the streets cleaned after if that's the only solution is to throw chat, then we need to get the streets cleaned back up. So it's not a dirt road. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, if leaves are gonna come off of the trees, and that's a given, we can't stop that. As far as having a burn site or a disposal site for that, that's all well and good. It has to go through DNR and they have to approve it. A lot of the people do not have the means to gather up their leaves from their property and transport them to this burn site or disposal site. So I'm not strictly against letting them burn the leaves as long as we're not under a no burn order because of drought. But I think there's room there for improvement, and if we just get together and talk about it, I'm sure we can come up with some solutions and how we can handle this. As far as all of the stone on the street, I don't like it either, but it's nice when there's ice and snow on the road, you can get out in your vehicle and get from point A to point B. Are there alternatives? Yes. We could use a calcium chloride solution. That's not the best thing in the world for the underside of your vehicle, and it's grossly more expensive than the chat. So most every problem or solution that we could come up with comes back to money. We don't have it, so we're limited on to what we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Johnner, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. A topic dear to my heart. I've only got a little bit to say about the chat. Thank you, Jesus. I live on a 32% hill. I ain't going in or out without it. And I hate salt. It goes into the rivers and the streams, and it's destructive and it's worthless. The chat could be swept up, and we have a sweeper. What happens, I don't know, but I couldn't function without that. In terms of the leaves, I'm a gardener. Don't burn it. It's compost. We absolutely do not need to do that. We have a tractor, we have a place, we could have it all taken up on the hill, and all we gotta do is wet it and turn it over a few times, and within a year, we've got some good rich compost. And I'm telling you, if you haven't tried it, 10 pounds of potatoes can turn into 200 pounds of food. Take some sawdust, lay your potatoes on the ground, sawdust, compost on top of that, lay you a soaker hose over that, come back in the fall, and you've got all the potatoes your grandkids can eat. It's a wonderful feeling.
How you doing, sir?
Tom?
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, as far as the leaves go, I mean, you got fall, you got leaves. Not everybody does, you know, there's people that like to smell the burning leaves. I, for one, like to smell the burning leaves. I mean, that's part of fall. You know, Chuck Hoffman over here takes leaves. You know, I mean, I'm not saying bombard the poor guy with a bunch of leaves, but you know, and you could take leaves to Star Hill, I'm sure. You know, they don't always have, there's times when they don't burn and times when they do. And as far as the chat's good stuff. I mean, it's probably saved a few wrecks. But I've even seen on the news where they use beet juice. You know, as a solvent for something else, I can't remember what it was, but, you know, people don't like the dust after the snow melts and the wind gets up, but there's always an alternative to something else. And I don't know if the beet juice would be cheaper or not, but that'd be worth checking into. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Meadner, you have 2 minutes.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not terribly knowledgeable on either one of these. In terms of the leaves, this has been a recurring thing. I've heard it from folks in my ward, and I'm not really sure what to do with that. So there's an area I need to spend some attention and go figure it out. As far as the chat, my understanding is, and we have to do something, we all recognize that, that this is an economic question. It's about what we can afford. At this point, we don't even really have big options here. We have chat or we don't have anything. So I think we have to continue to use that. In terms of things like using the street sweeper to clean up, I have a lot of questions for the administration about why certain things don't get done or why they're done in the way that they're done or with the frequency that they're done. Most of the times I've asked those questions, I've actually gotten pretty good answers back, that there are real reasons. Not always, but most of the time there's really a reason, and I don't know in this case. So again, it's something I think I'd want to research a little more. I didn't expect those 2 questions. And that brings me to this. If those are good questions, they're important community questions. There's things we can think about. They are not the critical questions for Louisiana. The critical questions for Louisiana are about the major infrastructural issues, the local economy, what we're going to do there, and how we're going to have a government that lets you participate and put your shoulder to the big burden. And frankly, that's where my attention is now and where it's going to stay if elected mayor.
Thank you. Well, that's it for the questions. There is one more left that one of you asked, and it actually has to do with what these gentlemen are about to say. Gentlemen, you're going to have 2 minutes to answer this. You may say anything you'd like about your candidacy. We'll start with you, Mr. Stevens, because you are first on the ballot, and go through the rest of the candidates in order. The question is, why do you want to be mayor? But sir, you can answer or say anything you'd like about your candidacy in the next 2 minutes.
I've been asked that question on numerous occasions. Want to know if I've fallen and hit my head or just what happened. Why do you want to be mayor? Because even if you were to do something right, it'll come out wrong. Well, my response to that many times was, I would like to be there when we do something right and that one time it comes out right. So I do not have all of the answers, and I don't believe any of the other gentlemen up here at this table have all the answers either. I would like to, this is my hometown, I would like to work to try to make it better. I would be very open to any suggestions from the council members, citizens, whoever, If you've been around City Hall or been to council meetings in the last few years, one of my pet sayings is, we can't have too much information. Well, that goes along with wanting to be mayor. You know, I don't have all the answers, but I'm certainly willing to listen to other people's ideas and see if we can find a way to adopt them or to maybe tweak those a little bit into something that will work. And Louisiana will come out the winner for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnner, you have 2 minutes to discuss your campaign.
Thank you, sir. Basically, what I think I can bring to the table is leadership. I don't know everything, don't have all the answers. I'm pretty good at working with people and people who are smart and getting good answers from them and working to a plan that will bring everything to fruition, so to speak. I have some pet peeves with things that are happening, and that's my motivation in being here and being where I'm at. And the water is really one tough issue for me that I hope I get the opportunity to deal with, and I think you all will be impressed with the fairness of how we resolve that issue. And I think we're all pretty much in agreement here. It's not a big debate that what's being done now is wrong, and we got to do different. But the other thing is, I want to see us move from being reactive. Our hearts break when something terrible happens in town, and we should be doing things to keep us from getting to that point, and we could be more proactive. Other communities have very good solutions. A lot of things that we can't afford, we could share with another town, and I think that would be a mayor's job, is to communicate with other towns, Clarksville and Eolia and Bowling Green. If Bowling Green has an inspector, maybe we could pay our inspection fees and let Bowling Green help with our inspections. We got to get more aggressive on inspections and get in these houses. I'd like to see the craftsmen in this town be trained and licensed so that when you hire someone, you know your electricity has been done correctly. I think that's an important thing that we have to start on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you have 2 minutes to discuss your campaign.
You know, one of the main questions people ask me, they say, when they found out I was running for mayor, they say, Dave, are you crazy? And I say, yes, I am. But my sole purpose for running for mayor is to see tourism in this town. And one of the main purposes for running for mayor is for the taxpayers. That's my sole purpose for doing this. I'm doing this for the taxpayers because it's their town. It's your town. It doesn't belong to the mayor. It doesn't belong to the city council. This town belongs to you and you alone. And even if you don't vote for me, get out and vote. Tell your friends, get out and vote. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Meadner, you have 2 minutes to discuss your campaign.
I get asked this multiple times a day by my wife for months. So I've had a lot of time to reflect, and sometimes I don't even come up with the same answer. I wouldn't make the same choice. But most of the time, it's pretty clear that internally, this is the way I can give back to this democracy that I love. I followed an academic and professional path as a young man. My father would like to say, often say I was a teenager well into my 30s. I was pretty into what was in it for me. But what I realized is that I'm best with myself. I like who I am best when I'm in a position of service to others. I envision that, I know that the job of the mayor is not to consolidate power. It is to empower others. And it's that spirit, that notion that drives my interest in being the next mayor of Louisiana. We have fantastic people, as you all are examples of, in Louisiana, and we've got to figure out how to empower one another, and that'll happen through transparency, clarity, inclusion, critical thinking, by being respectful to one another, by acting within the confines of the law. So I look forward to this because it's an avenue of service for me. It's a way to give to the democracy that I love.
Thank you. Mr. Dempsey, you have 2 minutes to discuss your campaign.
Thank you, Brett. I've been asked the same questions these guys here have been. Why would you even think about, after being gone for 25 years, coming back here and running for mayor? I grew up here. I was born and raised here. I graduated Louisiana High School before joining the military. And this town was a thriving, loving community, full of activities. And if elected mayor, I would like to try and bring that back to this town. You know, bring the cohesion back with the community, within the community, and just, you know, make it again. I'm not saying that it's not a lovely town. It is a lovely town, full of lovely people, but we got to stop the fighting. We got to stop the bickering. We got to stop the negativity. If you have one of my business cards where I said that I'm running for mayor, it says on it, plain and simple, positive Louisiana, for positive Louisiana. And we got to bring the positivity back. I talk to people every day, all day. I'm retired. I don't have much else to do. So, and they just, you know, they're not happy. They're tired of the negativity. They're tired of the fighting. They're tired of the bickering. So let's stop doing that, and I would like to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if you didn't get enough in the last 2.5 hours, you're going to get it again later tonight, maybe even tomorrow, on Tribcast website that the People's Tribune has. Also, there are several people who have recorded this for future broadcast on YouTube and other social media sites. I want to thank the Louisiana Press Journal, the People's Tribune, and Mark Froenig, KJFM, Rob Brown, Chris Ketters, who's back there and set up a lot of this, and also, of course, Bob Ringhausen and the American Legion Post 370. Let's give these gentlemen a big hand. One of them is going to be the next mayor. Thank you and good night.
Well done.
Hi, hon.
You're the people's preacher, right? Yes, I see. I make it right here. Well, when I want to.
You're really good with that camera.
Right. See you later, girlie.
All right. I'll send those to you.
My backside is better. I'm just joking.
You're so crazy. How you doing? She is so sweet.
I saw her and I was like, oh my gosh, I hope she's
Oh, she was fine. She was drawing pictures, and then she said, I thought I was think of it, I'll send you a message about what it was. Please draw pictures.
Yes, I like saying.
She pictures of us.
Yeah, she says that she wants to do, and I'm like, no, honey. Daddy did radio, mommy did newspaper. You go into TV where there's money.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if we can kind of get it cleared out. Paper ground, some out there.
I got you. You can't.
You got me?
Your hair's messed up. I've
Is
been
it?
going to tell you that all night long.
Did it get, the wind must have blowed it.
Mine's messed up too.
Thank you.
Look at my new name. It's not
Your name is Doug Dempsey. So, I forget what you were telling me earlier. You're going to have to tell your mom because I can't remember what it was.
my mom's right over there.
I know, I was trying to tell her what you told me earlier and I couldn't remember what it was about. Do you remember what it was about?
You know, one detail about it.
Well, you said. Remember? What were we talking about? Can't get away from it now.
We forgot your was on. We were probably kind of loud during the break.
I just put it on there just to see who was here and just let people. So I probably won't even post it. I was just going.
I was just, and then I filled up an 8 gig card, a 10 gig card, and part of another 8 gig card that I put on.
I put everything off my phone, so that's what. But if you don't, it gets it's so
Yeah,
it's all pixely and nasty.
so anyway, Chris is got
No telling what kind of conversations you'll hear on this. Yep. I want to do it. Hopefully we can get at City Hall, get the Wi-Fi turned on. Yeah. Are you Dave Donner?
No. I'm just, if it's not for you.
Oh, I know that, yeah.
That's yours. That's my extension. Or actually, that's.
You already got your gloves on.
I have been in and out.
I'm here picking these up and I don't know what I'm going to do with them.
Orange, if you don't mind.